Code comments. We all know them, we all love them. We read them all the time and we write them all the time, right? Crafting code comments is usually ranking in place 3 of the most favorite pastimes of the common software engineer, right after writing unit tests and being asked for the 5th time this week what the progress of your current ticket is by a manager that never wrote a single line of code before. But seriously, there are many reasons that developers give why they are opposed to adding comments to code they created. In general, there are 4 major arguments that are usually given. They don't add any value, my code is self-documenting, they get out of date, and I have no time to write them. Welcome to the first episode of Composing Compelling Code Comments, in which I will debunk each of the aforementioned arguments while giving you some good reasons why you should put effort into code comments. In the next video of the series, you will learn which benefits you can reap by doing so. Let's kick it off with the argument that is the easiest to debunk, that code comments do not add any value at all. I will give a quick anecdote of a bug that I recently ran into myself, which I could eventually resolve quickly with the help of a comment. I was using the duration API of Java 8, which simply is there to represent durations of time and do calculations with them. One of the static methods it offers is this one, to calculate a duration between 2 timestamps. I started using it under the assumption that it will always yield the absolute duration between the two, only to find out shortly after that it totally matters in which order one passes the timestamps. If the later one comes first, it will return a negative duration of time, which can of course lead to horrible bugs. In fairness to the JDK developers, this invariant of their method is clearly documented in the Javadoc comment. Now think about it yourself. I personally believe that this is the only way to solve this dilemma nicely. If they would have opted for a more descriptive method name, it would have definitely been subpar, especially since duration between is one of the rare occasions where even my mom could take an educated guess what this code will do. And always returning an absolute duration would have eliminated the legitimate use case of wanting to find out that a duration is in fact negative and by how much. A code comment came to the rescue, making this a good example of when comments are useful. In one of the next videos, I will present you with pointers to decide when to write a comment and what to put into it. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to not miss out on that one. Let's move on to the ever so popular
"My code is self-documenting."
But wait, before you have to angrily fish out your copy of clean code from under your monitor without destroying said monitor in the process, I did so myself already for you. I heard this excuse for not writing any code comments at all numerous times, while those people usually cite Uncle Bob, since he is supposedly claiming that all comments are evil. This is, however, not the case. While his writing style is quite sensationalist and thus easy to misinterpret, one real quote from his book goes as follows. Nothing can be quite so helpful as a well-placed comment. The proper use of comments is to compensate for our failure to express ourselves in code. We must have them because we cannot always figure out how to express ourselves without them, but their use is not a cause for celebration. So when you find yourself in a position where you need to write a comment, think it through and see whether there isn't some way to turn the tables and express yourself in code. So really his point is to first exhaust all possibilities for documenting the behavior of one's code before adding a comment. It should be a last resort of sorts. And what can I say? I agree with him that code should be expressive. However, comments are not a necessary evil in my books. If we always expect everyone to read all the code that we wrote in a class or module, there is simply no abstraction anymore. If the goal is to hide complexity, expecting others to read absolutely every line of our beautifully clean code won't hide any complexity at all. Keep in mind though that this opinion is not entirely contrary to Martin's, as he similarly points out plenty of examples of good code comments in his book. Nevertheless, the way that he wrote it glosses over the fact that you will encounter countless pieces of code that cannot be made clearer without a comment anymore, while not also sacrificing other aspects of it, such as the naming or even the entire interface of something you wrote. Just as HR departments asking for 5 years of work experience for a university graduate, the idea might sound great on paper while not being very pragmatic for everyday software development. As a matter of fact, think about the anecdote I gave for the first reason again regarding Java's duration API and try to make the problematic fact of it clearer without resorting to a comment. You'll find that it's not easy without simply adding a short and concise comment that eliminates this ambiguity. The next criticism on writing code comments is the first one that I actually somewhat share myself. as it surely happened to everyone already that a comment is simply not representing anymore what the alongside code is doing. In this case, a couple of things can be done to solve the situation ad hoc and to avoid it outright in the future. Still contemplating about Uncle Bob's statement, you should first consider if the comment is really necessary or it was simply forgotten as no one ever read it, as the code is just really clean to begin with. Next, and most importantly, make sure that the comment is as close to the code as possible. It often makes no sense to have a method with a wall of text on top of it instead of adding parts of the clarifications within the code itself, close to where it is relevant. The chance of it being forgotten is lowered dramatically. Don't mistake this, however, with a public API comment, which should of course not be hidden where the callers won't find it, but more on that in a future episode. Finally, be diligent. When committing code, do a quick checkup if you did not forget to update any comments. If your entire team makes sure to add the comments closer to the action, this won't even be a tedious activity at all, as the existing and potentially outdated comments will be close to your staged diff. Therefore, consider discussing this with coworkers and share the link to this video with them. Speaking about diligence, we can smoothly move on to the last of the comments on commenting. The first three arguments that you now heard are all conscious decisions by developers to not write comments, which leaves this last one as a combination of being too busy and too lazy. And if we're being honest with ourselves, is the latter more often than not. This is problematic for various reasons. The obvious first one is that if you and all of your colleagues give this same argument, you will simply end up with no documentation in your code at all. Secondly, there are these dozens of studies that one only spends writing code a fraction of the time compared to reading it. With this information in mind, you can keep the back of your napkin where it is to realize that comments you write easily have the potential to serve a greater purpose for everyone reading your code, then it offsets your own daily playing between the next coffee and table tennis break. Finally, as a foretaste of what is to come in the next episode of this series, investing the time to write an explanatory comment next to your code can serve as one of the best design tools there is. I cannot even count how many bugs I caught myself while writing code after adding a descriptive comment, only to realize that I had entirely wrong assumptions about what I just coded. More on that though in the next episode of Composing Compelling Code Comments. One more thing. Before you storm off adding comments to absolutely everything you program, I want to mention at the end of this video that my message is not to add as many comments to your code as possible. You should never add a comment for the sake of adding it. It should always serve a purpose. If you want to find out when I would recommend adding a comment and when it is better solved differently, stay tuned for the following videos of this series. Instead, I want to point out that if you believe that a comment increases the clarity of your code for future readers in any way or form, don't skip out on the opportunity due to any of the 4 arguments that were discussed today. If you disagree with me on any of these points or have anything to add, please do not hesitate to leave a comment under this video. After all, these are just my personal opinions that I've formed over the years. I'm of course always happy to hear out other ones and adapt my own further due to them. Additionally, if you have any wishes for the future episodes of this series or simply some feedback, I'd be very glad to read your comment under this video. Apart from that, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel while clicking the notification bell to not miss out on the upcoming videos of Composing Compelling Code Comments. Tschüss!